All right, welcome back for another deep dive here on Bookish Dives.
Always exciting to be back.
Yeah, we love to really get into some fascinating reads, and today is no exception.
No, not at all.
We are diving deep, and I mean deep, into David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person.
How to Know a Person, the art of seeing others deeply and being deeply seen.
Yeah, there you go. That's the whole title. Now, look, if you're here with us today, it's because you're the kind of person who wants the good stuff, right? You want the key insights without drowning in a sea of detail.
Exactly. We're all about maximizing those aha moments.
Exactly. And I think you're going to get a lot of those today because Brooks covers so much ground in this book. I mean, we're talking about everything from, our own blind spots to how to really understand someone else's perspective.
And not just understand it, but connect with it. That's
Yeah.
a key distinction.
Absolutely. And of course, one of the big things is how to have those deeper, more meaningful conversations.
Which, let's be honest, we could all use a little help with sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. So to kick things off, I think it's really interesting how Brooks starts this whole thing by talking about his own personal journey, his own growth when it comes to learning how to truly see other people.
Yeah, and I think his honesty right from the get-go is really refreshing. He doesn't shy away from the fact that this wasn't something that came naturally to him. He was kind of an observer by nature,
Yeah, that's right. Even as a kid, his nursery school teacher pointed that out.
Yeah, exactly. He was more interested in watching than interacting.
Mhm.
And it's funny, he even talks about this romantic interest he had in college. He was completely blindsided when she chose someone else because, well, he thought his writing skills would win her over.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. It's like he was living in his own head a little bit.
Totally. But I think that's a really important point. This tendency to be so internal, it's something he had to work to overcome. And that sets the stage for his whole exploration of how we connect with others and the world around us.
It's a good reminder for all of us that this ability to truly see other people, it's not always a given. It's something you can actually develop.
It's a skill you can hone. And that's encouraging, right?
Yeah.
Because it means we can all get better at it.
Right. So I'm curious, if this wasn't something that came easily to Brooks, what was the turning point? What sparked that shift toward wanting to connect more deeply?
Well, he's very upfront about the fact that it was a process, a journey of growth. He even says, I'm not an exceptional person, but I am a grower. And that emphasis on growth is really crucial.
I love that.
He even tells this amazing story about Oprah Winfrey. Apparently, she noticed a huge change in him over the course of just a few years.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. She even said he seemed blocked before.
Exactly. And when someone like Oprah, who's known for her incredible perception, picks up on that kind of transformation, it's a big deal.
It's a testament to the power of recognizing that need for growth, that willingness to change.
Right. And I think that's the first step toward forming those genuine connections.
So it sounds like this is about more than just individual growth. Brooks seems to suggest that there's a bigger picture here. Like, is this connected to what's happening in society as a whole?
You hit the nail on the head. He argues that we're living in a time where there's been a decline in what he calls moral knowledge.
Moral knowledge.
Yeah, and by that he means those essential relationship skills.
Mhm.
Things like navigating tough conversations, being able to forgive, truly understanding another person's point of view.
So those core things that help us get along.
Exactly. And he suggests that, in a way, our education system has unintentionally sidelined those skills by focusing so heavily on career preparation. Even the humanities, which traditionally helped us understand the human condition, have taken a back seat.
So we're losing sight of the human element.
In a way, yeah. And then there's social media, which can give this false sense of connection without the genuine trust and care that real-life interaction requires. It's like we're replacing real intimacy with constant stimulation.
And judgment. I mean, let's be honest, social media can be a breeding ground for judgment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that there's a real person on the other side of the screen.
So if we're not prioritizing these social skills, what are the consequences? What's Brooks seeing out there in the real world?
Well, as a journalist, he's noticed this pervasive feeling of invisibility and disrespect across different groups.
Different groups.
Yeah, whether it's racial divides, urban versus rural, political differences, generational gaps. It seems like so many people feel unseen and unheard.
Wow, that's pretty sobering.
It is. But what's interesting is how he links these big societal issues to the quality of our individual interactions.
Okay, I'm listening.
He's saying that fixing those larger rifts actually starts with the smaller things, those everyday conversations where we make an effort to really see and hear each other, it's about rebuilding that social fabric one thread at a time.
So it's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. If we want to heal those bigger wounds, we have to start with ourselves and how we treat each other on a personal level.
Okay, so if feeling seen is so crucial, how do we actually do that? I mean, Brooks talks about this idea of beholding.
Right, beholding. It's more than just noticing someone. It's about grasping the wholeness of another person.
The wholeness.
Yeah, their inner life, their struggles, the unique way they see the world. It's that intuitive understanding you might have with someone you're really close to.
Like you can almost see things from their perspective.
Exactly. He uses this beautiful image of someone standing in a doorway with the light behind them. And you're just taking in their presence, their full complexity.
I like that.
The key takeaway here is to shift away from seeing people as just a collection of traits or labels.
But to see them as individuals with their own inherent worth.
Exactly. He talks about recognizing the infinite dignity of each person, even in those brief interactions, assuming that the person in front of you has a soul, you know.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift in how we view each other.
Right. It's about seeing people as precious, not as problems to be solved or projects to be worked on.
He contrasts this with being a diminisher. Someone who, whether through ego or lack of curiosity, reduces others.
Right. They diminish rather than elevate. And then there's the Illuminator's gaze.
Okay, tell me about that.
Think of someone like Mr. Rogers or Ted Lasso. They have that genuine warmth and interest. Qualities like tenderness, receptivity, curiosity.
So it's not just what you see, but how you see it.
Exactly. Receptivity means putting aside your own biases and truly being open to what the other person is sharing. And active curiosity is like having an explorer's mindset. You want to understand what it's like to walk in their shoes, even if you don't agree with everything they believe.
He uses a great analogy from Tolstoy about people being like rivers. The water is essentially the same, but each river flows in its own unique way, showing different characteristics and different points.
Right. Just like with people. We all have the potential for different human qualities, and we're constantly evolving.
So our snap judgments can be way off.
Often they are. That's why he emphasizes cultivating this just and loving attention.
He mentions the work of therapist Mary Pfeiffer. She says that therapy is more about a way of paying attention, which is the purest form of love.
That's beautiful.
It is. It's about noticing and acknowledging the good, even the small acts of kindness.
And he gives examples of how Pfeiffer often focuses on highlighting those positive moments within families. It's about shifting the attention from problems to potential and recognizing the good that often goes unnoticed.
So when it comes to actually connecting in conversations, Brooks talks about accompaniment. It's about being patient and meeting people where they are.
Right. He quotes D.H. Lawrence, "Whoever wants life must go softly towards life."
That's a lovely quote. It speaks to a gentle approach, doesn't it?
It does. Accompaniment involves a surrender of power, as Brooks puts it.
It's not about forcing your own agenda.
Exactly. It's not about rushing someone's process, but being there for them as they evolve in their own way.
You're being present.
Exactly. And sometimes that's the most important thing, just showing up, especially during those tough times, without feeling like you have to offer all the answers.
He tells a really moving story about these med students who just sat with their professor after she experienced a loss.
Yeah, a beautiful example of that. Quiet but powerful compassion.
It's about being a steady presence.
And even touches on the idea that in any relationship, the most important thing might not be fixing each other.
But simply being a witness.
Exactly. Recognizing and acknowledging another person's essence. Being there for a journey that might be too hard to make alone.
And speaking of journeys, he brings up the powerful example of Delphine, who had to completely rebuild her understanding of the world after losing her daughter. It really emphasizes that a person is a point of view, constantly being shaped by their experiences.
And that leads to a fascinating discussion about how our brains actively shape our reality. It's not just passively absorbing information.
Well, a lot more dynamic than that.
Right. It's an active process of prediction and correction. And he uses some really interesting examples to illustrate this, like the invisible gorilla experiment.
Oh, yeah, where people completely miss something obvious because they're focused on something else.
Exactly. And the door experiment, where people fail to notice a change because they're not expecting it.
It's wild how our expectations can literally blind us to what's right in front of us.
It really highlights how subjective our perception is. What we see isn't necessarily what's actually there.
So, with all those potential blind spots, how do we have better conversations? Brooks offers some really practical tips.
He does. One is to treat attention like an on-off switch, not a dimmer.
Be fully present.
Right. He even mentions the slant method. Sit up, lean forward, ask questions, nod, track the speaker. It sounds basic, but it makes a huge difference.
It's all about showing that you're engaged.
And he emphasizes that active listening is an invitation for the other person to open up.
It's like creating a safe space for them to share.
Exactly. He also talks about asking follow-up questions that dig deeper into their experience.
How did that make you feel? What did you learn from that? Those kinds of questions.
Right. They show that you're genuinely interested and encourage deeper reflection.
One thing that really stuck with me is his advice to not be afraid of the pause. We're so quick to fill those silences.
But sometimes that cuts off deeper listening.
Exactly. He talks about this improv exercise that shows how we often stop truly listening around the elbow of someone's story.
We're already formulating our response instead of fully taking in what they're saying.
A good conversationalist listens to understand, not just to reply.
And that pause can be really valuable for both people.
To make sure we're really getting it, Brooks talks about looping.
Summarizing what someone said to check if you've understood correctly.
Right. And while he acknowledges that overly formal looping can sound a bit weird,
The idea is to actively seek clarification.
he also talks about the power of asking open-ended, insightful questions. Those questions that can help someone gain clarity about their own thoughts.
It's like having a clearness committee for your own mind.
I love that. And he has some great advice for disagreements.
Oh yeah, he says try to find the disagreement under the disagreement.
So instead of just repeating your own point, you try to understand the deeper values or perspectives driving the conflict.
It's about going beyond those surface-level arguments.
Now, shifting from general conversation to understanding individuals, Brooks really emphasizes the power of narrative. People tend to open up more through stories.
He shares an anecdote about David Bradley, who uses index cards with questions about goals and skills.
It's a way to help people gain perspective on their own lives.
And he suggests exploring someone's high school experience.
As a way to tap into those formative experiences and maybe even some enduring vulnerabilities.
It's about asking open-ended questions like, and then what happened? And really listening as their story unfolds.
He even learned from Condoleezza Rice that sometimes a simple question can be more helpful than a clever one.
Because it allows the person to step back and see the bigger picture themselves.
And once you know someone well, Brooks encourages asking those big questions.
Those humble but profound questions that spark meaningful conversations.
He quotes Studs Terkel, who said, "People will talk if you just listen because, in most cases, no one's ever really listened before."
That's so true.
It's a powerful reminder, and I think it's so relevant today with the rising rates of depression and loneliness. Brooks even touches on how that plays out in our politics.
He mentions this idea of a recognition order, where people feel invisible and unrecognized.
So they turn to the politics of recognition to find their identity.
But Brooks points out that that doesn't necessarily lead to genuine community or connection.
It can be more about external validation than internal growth.
Right. And he suggests that this lack of genuine connection can even contribute to societal violence.
Okay, I'm curious about that.
He talks about individuals who feel like failed joiners, who have experienced rejection.
They might turn to hatred and violence as a way to gain recognition, even if it's negative.
It's a twisted way of trying to be seen.
And this brings us back to moral formation. Brooks argues that our institutions, especially schools, are focusing more on career prep than on developing character and social-emotional skills.
It's like we've lost sight of the importance of moral knowledge.
And he sees that as a big factor in the challenges we're facing today.
Absolutely. He also stresses the importance of understanding the historical context and power dynamics that shape how we interact with each other.
Right. You can't fully know someone without acknowledging those influences on their lives.
Exactly. And he shares a personal story about a panel discussion where a Black intellectual had a very different understanding of the culture wars than he did.
It highlights how important it is to consider someone else's frame of reference.
And the underlying emotions that are always present in any conversation.
He points out that every conversation operates on two levels: the explicit topic and the unspoken emotional exchange.
With every interaction, we're either building safety and respect or creating threat and disrespect.
It's a good reminder to be mindful of the impact we're having.
And he emphasizes the importance of staying within the other person's perspective, especially when they're sharing something difficult.
Don't immediately jump back to your own point of view.
Curiosity is key, even in those tense moments.
Because people in different circumstances literally experience different worlds. He brings up Dennis Proffitt's research on affordances.
where your abilities and circumstances literally change what you see as possible or relevant.
A hiker sees a mountain as a challenge. Someone with an injury sees an obstacle.
Right. It's not just about opinions. It's about how our brains filter information based on what's affordable or actionable for us.
So we need to ask people how they see things, because their perspective might be completely different from ours.
And Brooks acknowledges that we can never fully grasp the experience of someone whose life is vastly different from ours.
But by developing our ability to see and hear others, we can build trust and understanding.
He shares a very personal story about his friend Pete's struggle with severe depression.
It illustrates the limitations of trying to reframe things positively and the importance of just being present.
Acknowledging their reality and offering support.
And he talks about how our early childhood experiences have a huge impact on us, even unconsciously.
Those early wounds and fears can even be passed down through generations.
He mentions the Grant study, which found that the warmth of those early relationships was a major predictor of life satisfaction.
Even more so than things like IQ or socioeconomic status.
It shows just how much those early connections matter.
He also discusses some common defense mechanisms that can arise from difficult childhoods, like overreactivity or passive aggression.
Recognizing those patterns in ourselves and others is so important for healthy relationships.
And he stresses that just thinking about it isn't enough. We need friends who can offer an outside perspective and remind us that our future is more important than our past.
And empathy is a crucial skill for navigating all this complexity.
Mirroring others' emotions, being able to distinguish between different feelings, paying attention to their subtle cues.
He even shares Viola Davis's insight that acting is about observing and stealing human behavior.
It's a great way to think about empathy.
So becoming more empathetic is about training our bodies to respond in open and interactive ways.
He talks about the power of co-regulation, how physical presence and trust can help calm each other's nervous systems.
Like holding a crying baby.
Exactly. That physical closeness can be so regulating for both people.
Brooks also looks at how we're shaped by suffering.
He uses Barbara Lazare Asher's experience with her husband's terminal illness as an example.
How facing death can clarify what's really important.
And even bring unexpected moments of grace.
He also shares George Buechner's story of dealing with his father's suicide.
And how shutting yourself off from pain can also prevent you from experiencing joy.
He suggests exercises for friends to help each other explore their pasts and understand the values they developed growing up.
This leads to a discussion of the big 5 personality traits.
Extroversion, conscientiousness, neuroticism, agreeableness, and openness.
It's a framework for understanding ourselves and others.
And he points out that each trait has its strengths and weaknesses.
And can be developed over time.
Beyond personality, he explores life tasks.
Common patterns of human behavior and the states of mind that tend to go with them.
Things like establishing independence, forming connections, building a career.
And later stages like contributing to the next generation and finding integrity.
He reminds us that these are general patterns, not rigid stages.
But they can help us understand what someone might be focusing on in their life.
And he emphasizes that the transitions between these life tasks can be challenging.
They often require us to let go of old ways of thinking and embrace new ones.
It's an ongoing process of adapting and reevaluating.
A key part of personal growth.
And finally, Brooks returns to the power of asking people to tell their stories.
He mentions Nicholas Epley's research showing that we often underestimate how much others want to connect and share.
Just asking about their lives can be a powerful way to build connection.
He contrasts this with the limitations of purely analytical thinking.
And stresses the importance of narrative thinking for truly understanding someone.
He delves into the idea of our inner voice and how we construct our life stories over time.
He introduces McAdams's concept of the imago, our idealized self-image, the role we aspire to.
And how understanding someone's imago can offer deep insights into their motivations.
He also discusses the plot of our life stories and how important it is to be able to adapt our narrative when life throws us curveballs.
And Brooks emphasizes that by truly listening to someone's story, we're not just taking in information.
We're actively helping them shape that story.
Our affirmation and acknowledgement play a significant role in their sense of identity.
He also explores the influence of our ancestors and cultural background.
referencing Zora Neale Hurston's deep connection to her heritage and Richard Nisbet's research on cultural differences,
He shares personal moments where teachers truly saw him beyond his surface presentation.
and reflects on the difference between mere intelligence and true wisdom, which comes from lived experience and thoughtful reflection.
He concludes by stressing the importance of communities of truth.
Those spaces where open and respectful dialogue leads to deeper understanding and growth.
So David Brooks's How to Know a Person is packed with insights about human connection.
We've just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some valuable takeaways.
From understanding our own biases to truly beholding others and having more meaningful conversations, there's so much to learn from this book.
Absolutely. Just to recap a few of those key ideas.
Yeah.
Brooks's own journey of growth, the societal decline in our social skills, the power of beholding, how our expectations can blind us, the importance of focused attention, and embracing pauses in conversation.
Recognizing the different layers of a conversation, understanding that everyone sees the world in their own unique way, the gentle approach of accompaniment, the idea that a person is a constantly evolving perspective, and the importance of moral formation.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is, but that's what we do here on Bookish Dives. We love to dive deep. And for those of you who appreciate these deep dives into fascinating books,
Be sure to follow us for more daily book summaries.
we're always exploring new and noteworthy reads. So until next time, happy reading.
And happy connecting.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.